Hello, thanks for tuning in, and today we'll continue with Chapter 2 for Nerus. So last time we saw Obley live on this planet inhabited by bug people, these strong bug people. I think that's what they are, and he worked on this fishing dock. He decided to live as a mortal rather than living with the descendants nor the shapeshifters. He decided to live amongst the mortals, and he was friends with this one person that he worked with, and shortly after he died, it was only added more depression to Obley because Nerus is still traveling the void. So this person that he had a close working relationship and as befriended, for him to die, that added even more depression to Obley. So he decided to live by hunting and live out in the woods, and this shapeshifter came and delivered him a letter from, I believe it's Ocels or Temp, one of them, but this shapeshifter delivered a letter from the descendants to Sex, which was pretty weird that a shapeshifter would deliver something from the shapeshifters. That a shapeshifter would deliver something from the descendants to Obley. And I forgot what the details out there were, but it dealt with them being able to find a way to get Nerus out of the void. So perhaps there's some hope for Obley getting Nerus out of the void. So Obley also got to talk with the Demiurge, which is the god the descendants, I think they worship, or I think the Demiurge is the person that created the descendants. So you can go to the previous video if you want to see more of that discussion between Sax and the Demiurge. Seeing that the Demiurge is pretty lonely himself, not being able to see his family. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the time egg. So we cover this here with Obley and Nerus and the Battle of Aeon, and this is the aftermath of the Battle of Aeon, with Nerus being trapped in the void and Obley having to find a way to cope with Nerus not being there, as well as find a way to get him out of the void. And now we're about to go to these stories here. I'm going to start from this one and go to the left. To the right. I'm going to start with this here and go to the right. So we're going to start here. Initializing playback. Body stuffed his hands in his pockets and shuddered as he made his way down the road. The night was quiet, not a dog or cat to be heard in the distance. A thin layer of mist had settled on the streets. The policeman alongside him laughed as he saw him adjust his scarf. He found the chill pleasant, and so he had gone out with his normal clothes. He must have found amusing how dressed up Body was by comparison. The crocodile couldn't wait to get to his destination. Shut up, man. I feel so cold because I'm blessed. You wouldn't look down on a deity's blessing, wouldn't you? Quit to irritate as usual. Yes, please save me all the barking about your blessing. You talk as if you were working at the church instead of a detective. That's a low blow. It's not low if it's true, I say. A fair and square blow. The two men became distracted by a carriage passing by them. Shortly after they arrived at one of the few buildings arrived with its lights still on. By his side with relief as he greeted at being greeted by the murky warmth inside the locale. The smell of cigars instead with music from an old record player immediately assaulted their senses. The crocodile took his scarf and some other clothing articles off and hung them by the entrance before looking for a free table. The police officer sat across from him, twiddling his thumbs. But yes, good job in today's case. We didn't even consider that tenant was related to the crime, let alone checking his background. You gotta tell me someday where you get all the information from. I'm not doing anything illegal, if that's what's bothering you. People are very willing to gossip if you are nice and butter them up. I know it's a connection you detectives missed, that's all. I see. I admit I hadn't figured you to be a people person. But I wouldn't put it that way either. He wasn't particularly eager to socialize, but being affable was at times an important mystery-solving skill. One doesn't need violence or intimidation to crack people open. Showing kindness the right way, being understanding or friendly at the right moment. All those could earn you access to other people's hearts. Being one to feel understood might open up to someone who shows interest. Of course, he wasn't some fiend opening people for the sake of it. But if something smelled wrong, it was his duty to investigate. This had been the case with the last crime he solved, when he managed to establish a connection between the seemingly unrelated victim and killer by interviewing the other tenants. Still, what an unpleasant business it all was. He must prefer his puzzles to not be so melodramatic. Perhaps he should have specialized in investigating cases of thievery instead of murders. I'm curious. I took a sip of his wine, waiting for the officer to continue. But he waited for the crocodile to respond. What about? Octavio from the church and not moved south to this little country to work as a private detective. A low rumble resonated with him by his throat. I'm sorry. Do you just like that name? Regardless, it's a good question. Why indeed? But I had pondered the same on multiple occasions. Each time the same answer popped up. That one day when his and Rael's family had gone on vacation, the two of them ran away into the forest. The canine silhouette as he stood on top of that boulder, the leaves dancing around him. Things had changed since then, but back then Bobby lived up to him. He wanted to be like him. So when Rael told him he wanted to run away from home, the crocodile blindly followed him. Had that been a mistake? It didn't matter. Bobby had learned to live with his choices and felt accomplished as he was. Much of how he did his detective work he had learned from this canine. Although he used to show little restraint, and Bobby often had to remind him to not prod people they couldn't establish as being connected to the case. Now Rael wasn't around anymore. They started their detective business together as a duo, but he had retired a few years ago, back after meeting a woman, and then he disappeared. His surviving child and his wife behind. But had first been left to pick up the pieces of the business he abandoned, and years later, Rael called him to hastily explain he needed to go away for some time and to ask him to look after his family. Rael joked with a friend he had picked in the end. I should check on Angela tomorrow. It sounds like things have been rough for you. I'm not good with kids, let alone abandoned wives. And Angela, I don't want to kick her while she's down, but something's off with her. It's nothing like what I heard from Rael before we fell out of touch. There's more going on here than meets the eye. Is that your detective's intuitions talking? You can say that. The police officer put down his fork and closed his eyes as he drank some more wine. There's nothing strange about a mother grieving after being abandoned by her husband's body, but Ro didn't make it sound like that was the case. Had the oppressive heat come back? This happened a year ago, more or less, and there are no signs of his return yet. I climbed outside and shook his head. The both of them perked up when a loud scratch tore through the air. Soon, some drunk had tried to fiddle with the record player, knocking a needle across the record surface. Brian then looked at the wall and noticed the time. He hurried up to finish his meat and wine. "You're going so soon?" "I told you, didn't I? Have an appointment tonight." "Right. What's that about?" "Yeah, I'm not going to tell you everything just because you asked." It was nobody else's business. After the detective had come with more baggage than his sterile younger self had estimated. He needed a place where he could forget all about work, start being himself, and relax. Drinking didn't scratch that itch. Much less did these stuffy, noisy taverns. Police officers loved frequenting these places so they reminded him too much of work. No, he needed to separate from Body Spiner the detective. A place where, even if recognized, he'd be treated differently. A place with like-minded individuals. I'll see you later. Have a good one. After entering a room, Body headed directly to a familiar locker room. Each piece of clothing he freed himself from was away off his shoulders, which he then tossed into a creaky wooden locker. Once free of the constraints of the fabric, he proceeded to grab the one large-sized towel available and tied it around his waist and above his tail. It was white and rough to the touch, dry. It might even have been uncomfortable if not for the equally well skills protecting him. His butt was mostly exposed, but he didn't care. He didn't have anything to hide while in here. Body sighed, telling himself to forget everything. It wasn't true one left their old self at the door when entering the bathhouse, but at the very least, everything outside ceased to matter as much. What sort of man would he choose? How would he be of service to him, to give him a night to remember? Would he try to hook up with one of the other regulars, or would be on the lookout for newcomers? Perhaps he would even entertain many of them that night. That thought produced a faint tingling within his stomach. A cloud of steam welcomed the crocodile into the room. He detected around 4 other men amidst the fog before walking further in and taking a seat. He lay back on the wet mosaic wall, allowing the heat to melt away the stress from his job. His fingers traced a path through his leg up to his belly, running into 1 or 2 scars along the way. What was this one from? Right, that must have been from the time he had to apprehend Mr. Andis. He was inexperienced back then, so he had been unable to prevent the criminal from stabbing him in the thigh. He had been very fortunate that the damage wasn't fatal. And this one, what was it again? A bite mark from a hunting dog? A gunshot here and scar there. It all became blurry, like the steam filling the room, and melted away. And so did Body Spiner, the detective who melted away to reveal the nameless, blessed man underneath. The man couldn't notice the peeking eyes surrounding him. Did the fact the crocodile was a blessed human without these men with some thrill they couldn't find anywhere else? Was that why they kept coming back? Did they enjoy showing what once was considered a sign of divine favor to the for their oppressor? The crocodile raised a hand and made a gesture for anyone to get closer. The first man that approached him felt familiar, but he wasn't sure they knew each other. Faces blurred together in here. He did immediately recognize his voice, however. "It's been a while since I last saw you. We're starting to miss you. The town has been needing my services very, very often lately. It barely leaves me with some time for myself. Don't forget, we also need you, you big lug." "Why, I wouldn't dare." The man drew closer, sneaking one hand under the crocodile's towel. A moan rumbled out his throat, and the man got right to the point and started playing with his slit. The crocodile sent another of the onlookers, who wasn't even trying to hide his erection, to join them. The men ran their hands through his body with little care, kissed his belly, shoulders, and neck. The crocodile soon stood up and guided the two men to his room. He lay on his back and opened his legs, granted the two men access. One of them didn't waste any time before mounting him and thrusting into his slit. The crocodile closed his eyes and endured. He really had missed him. There was no wonder the crocodile hadn't come here in 2 months. As soon as that thought popped up, he invited the second man to get closer. He needed a distraction. His mouth wasn't fit for blowjobs, but the scaly man was skilled enough with his fingers to entertain his second guest until it was his turn to wet his backside. He kept him just on the edge, occasionally licking off the gum dripping from his head. When he noticed the man fucking his slit was drawing closer to his climax, he gently nudged him away with his legs and offered him to change places with the other man. He was planning to have them come inside him, of course, but it was too soon still. He'd keep them both occupied and on the edge all night. He might have been just a bathhouse whore, but he still got to decide the rules of the game. Maybe then the crocodile felt a pain of discomfort in the back of his mind. He had been paying attention to his man. He knew one very well, the other seemed harmless enough. But so he was being overly cautious. It had been so long since his last visit here. Sure, they weren't still waiting for him. The young man stopped his jerking motion, looked at the crocodile somewhat strangely. You feeling well? Yes, I'm sorry, my mind was drifted away for a moment. It made no sense to think about it. That was something for Bobby to be concerned about. He had judged that by now it should be safer to spend the night here. So he smiled and invited them to switch again. That night, 2 months ago, someone had found out about his night adventures. Someone knew this was when he was at his most vulnerable, so naturally, this was when they decided to attack. Bobby still didn't know what had happened as the assailant managed to escape, and he couldn't even recall his face. Just who was that? It was unlucky for him to have been the relative or a friend or someone he helped capture. He found it hard to believe they followed him here. But the other possibility wasn't any better. Had he overstepped and angered the wrong people, so they sent an assassin after him? The police were of that opinion. The crocodile got jerked back into reality by a thunderous thrust and a man's moans as he sought rope after rope would come. Damn it, he had gotten distracted. You want to stay for a while longer? No, thank you. I saw him headed home a while ago. I see. This night wasn't going as the crocodile hoped, but it wasn't over yet. Young man that remained had some courage to join in at threesome, but he was less assertive than their other lover. Besides, the scaly had grown tired of light on his back. He straddled on top of the small man as he rolled his dick. His helpless prey could do little more than hold on to his legs as he milked for all he was worth. The crocodile caressed his face and hair, enjoyed the expression of pleasure. The tenderness wasn't too bad either. He knew nothing of this young man under him, but he enjoyed the intimacy. Then, in enjoying such a close look at his face, he squeezed the semen out of him. There weren't any words after that. The crocodile lay down, wrapping the other man in his arms. Then protested tried to get up, so taking that necessity brought him a bit closer. But now he would be getting up to see if he could get some more fun before wrapping up the night, but the idea didn't seem appealing at all. Or is this that he was apprehensive after the incident 2 months ago? Maybe he had started craving this sort of intimacy. Either way, up until a few moments ago, this wasn't fun. His job wasn't fun anymore. His escapades at the bathhouse weren't fun anymore either. He was alone, stuck in unfulfilling work relationships with the police, always on the lookout for people who break open or know the investigation. Perhaps he had been focusing on his job too much and neglected other aspects of his life. But solving crimes just wasn't fun anymore, not without Will. And even if he were to come back one day and join him again, all those recent events had soured the image of his canine friend. But he wanted to keep holding on to the man in his arms, but he knew he was a stranger with his life to go back to. A life he wasn't a part of. He wasn't a part of anyone's life. So by concluding that night, it was time to bring some change into his life. First of all, he needed a career change. He wasn't sure what yet, but he had time to figure it out. His job at the time paid well, and his expenses were low enough he'd be able to survive with his savings for a while if needed. And maybe he'd finally be in a place to look for actual friendships once that's done. Whatever the case, he needed to start heading home soon. He's supposed to check on Angela tomorrow. Buddy was always amazed when visiting these suburbs, knowing his old friend had spent some years living here. It didn't fit him in his opinion. He always enjoyed living on the streets for some red light district more than settling down in such a secluded location. I couldn't think of it. He and his wife did spend a great deal of time traveling before his disappearance. But that was for job reasons. Angela never told him what they were doing, probably because her wounds were still too fresh. And seeing their older son was about to join them in their business too, just before he died in an accident, and Will disappeared soon after. That damn dog, I never thought I'd feel bad for his wife. Angela's family home was just big and extravagant and peerless as the other houses in the area. It looked more like a small mansion, I bet, still too large for just 4 people to be living in it. Let alone just 2. Buddy knocked on the door and waited, both hands stuffed deep in his pockets. He waited for several seconds, but there was no response. Were they out? He knocked again, harder. This time there was a faint sound coming from somewhere inside the house. Someone coming down the stairs, perhaps. That was strange. He never heard that from outside before. Despite that, there was still no answer. But convinced somebody was home, Buddy reached to knock a third time. Only then did the door open. The small golden chain rattled before being stretched straight. Then fingers some white one would think them translucent were resting on the door's edge. A single red eye peeked from the crack to greet Buddy. The crocodile nodded at the figure. Hello, Angela. After an instant, the door slowly opened and there was some noise from the chain before being undone, before it opened again in its entirety, revealing the figure of a ghastly woman. Her skin and hair were equally pale, contrasted with her deep red eyes. Her fingers, shoulders, and cheeks were thin, as if she hadn't been eating properly for weeks. If only that was a problem. How are you feeling today? What a pointless question. She looked worse than last time he'd been there, and that was less than a week ago. Master would be wise to start checking up on her even more frequently, he thought, but he feared that would only add to her stress. The way her chest rose and deflated, how visited she was with her necklace. Had something happened? Where was Elisa? What about Lisa? Oh, could she be at the school? No, she's in her room. Will's eyes danced with hesitation for a brief moment. Then she sighed with resignation and locked eyes with the crocodile. Buddy, could you come in? The crocodile raised an eyebrow, but nodded and stepped into the house while she made way for him. They entered a tidy, spacious dining room. How well of you to invite me inside before I even butter you up. No answer. Angela looked down, clasping her hand together, her eyes contemplative. There's something wrong. I'm not sure you will believe me, is all, Buddy. I think someone broke into the house yesterday. The crocodile let an interested guest out. He wouldn't have guessed from the state of the house. It didn't look like it had been ransacked overnight or anything of the sort. Why? Last night she took a deep breath. Someone was staring at me while I was lying down on the bed. I thought it was Elise at first, but he was too tall. He had these big yellow eyes. She started shaking all over before Buddy stepped closer and put a hand on her shoulder. He put on a patient, soft voice. It's all right, Lisa. Listen, did you check your doors and windows? Yes, but I didn't find anything. What about Lisa? She was fast asleep. She didn't hear or see anything. Buddy closed his eyes. Vicky was dreaming. Scary as they might be, hallucinations like that can happen to anyone while they're asleep. I'm guessing you'd like me to chat upstairs just in case, right? Angela's jaw went limp from her surprise for an instant, but she quickly gathered what wits she had left and nodded. Do you want to come? Oh no, I'm too scared to go there right now. Well, I promise you it'll be fine. I'll be back soon. After reassuring Tabitha soda and asking for directions to her room, Buddy went upstairs. Buddy furrowed his eyebrows upon entering the bedroom. The king-size bed didn't look like it had been tended in a long time. The closet was open and some folded pieces of clothing were laid on the floor. Had Angela been looking for something in there? She admitted someone had been staring at her but neglected to give details. Perhaps she thought someone was standing in front of this closet the night prior. In addition to women's clothing, there were multiple articles intended for a rather tall man. They hadn't been used in a long time. Bonnie ignored this and checked the closet. It was almost empty after Angela went through it. Even his trained eye was unable to discern anything out of the ordinary. Next, she crouched beside the bed and looked around. There wasn't anything there. Angela was confused for a person or even a pair of eyes. This makes no sense. I don't want to disregard what she says on principle, but she has been getting worse. What the hell am I supposed to do about this? Well, I'm a detective, not a doctor. If I was, Angela would refuse to see me anyway. Buddy exited the bedroom. Before he could make his way downstairs, however, another door softly opened. He caught his eye, and behind it was a small figure. A child with long, blonde hair and amber eyes, much like her father's. The crocodile smiled and nodded at her, but before he could walk away, the kid talked to him. Are you with the police? No, kid. I'm a private detective. I'm referring to your mother. It's the first time we meet, isn't it? It was then that the kid's words fully sank in. Why does he think she was with the police? After glancing at the stairs, Buddy stepped closer to the child and squatted to meet her, eye to eye. She seemed surprisingly calm around him. Why did you think I was with the police? Lisa looked down and stepped out from behind the door. She stood like a penguin, both arms tense but glued to her sides, and looked at the crocodile. This close up, the crocodile noticed a new detail, small but still noticeable bruises on the kid's arms. A police officer visited the other day, but Mama told me to go upstairs. I see your mama asked me to help her with something. Say, have you noticed anything strange around the house? The kid looked to the side and tilted her head. She wanted to say something, but she didn't find the words for it. Instead, she started walking towards the one door near the end of the stairs. The crocodile followed her, and once she stopped, intended to open it. It was locked. What is this place? Grandpa's room. Grandpa? It's the first time I hear of such a thing. Is your grandfather living with you now? No. He went away with Daddy and David. And while you showing it to me. Lisa looked down and put her hands behind her back, twisted her body to either side. I don't know. Something was bothering this kid, but either because of a lack of vocabulary or comprehension, she was unable to communicate what. Talking to her would be fruitless, and Bobby was now worried that Angela would come to check on him and find them talking, so he sent her back to her room. But he stopped her to ask one last question. Have you gone to school so late? Well, he says I have to stay inside. I see. This is much worse than I had suspected. What did I do? So I talked to Angela about this. The school must have already noticed that Lisa stopped attending her classes and sent someone to check on her. But you would expect the teachers to do that. So why were the police here? The atmosphere at the bar was lacking that day, with the record player being out of service. Some drunken must have gotten annoyed at it, kicked it, and broken a component inside. At one point, he felt compelled to drink what remained. He regretted it soon after. Eventually, the sound of the doorbell announced the arrival of a new guest, Buddy's cop buddy. He sat across from him with a whining grunt, and the crocodile put the glass down. Well, I have to say, I was surprised to receive a letter from you all people, Buddy. I can't blame you. Were you able to look into what I requested? The man's cheeks filled with air as he clutched his hands on the table. Yes, I can't tell you everything I found out, you surely understand, but I can answer a question or two. Buddy closed his eyes and nodded. Very well. Why did the police visit Angela? The policeman sighed. 2 days ago, a teacher from her daughter's school checked up on them because the girl started attending classes and there was no word from her or her family. Things were fine until Angela became very violent and attacked the woman. That's when we were called to the scene. Incidentally, we've been receiving reports of erratic behavior from Angela as of late. My fellow policemen were tasked with reporting on the current situation in the house, or they plan to intervene. It's possible. What do you think of the woman, Buddy? Do you think she's well? I can't say I know her well. We only met after her husband went missing. But even then, I think some of her behavior is irregular, yes. There you have it. I think some people high up are trying to gauge if seeing her child safe in their current living situation. If she continues like this, I'm afraid they might take the kid away. The man took a toothpick and put it in his mouth, much like one would do with a cigar. Meanwhile, Buddy stared at the table, his claws hitting the wooden surface with a rhythm. A dry stirred within Buddy. Although he felt no obligation toward his old friend anymore, he had taken it upon himself to make sure his family would be safe. Knowing the situation had deteriorated to this extent under his nose hurt. He was supposed to be good at seeing through people and forcing their secrets into the open. How could he turn his eyes away from Angela's situation the way he did? Damn you, Will. I was never supposed to deal with crap like this. Think, Buddy Spiner. What are you going to do now? What's the connection between you and his family, Buddy? I don't think they are connected to you or your. I don't think they are connected to one of your investigations, am I right? Yes, you are. Why raised his eyes to him, shaking. The policeman raised an eyebrow. I figured so. I was mighty curious about why you want info on them. And well, the missing husband detail sticks out like a sore thumb, you know? I believe it's wasteful to ask questions to know you know the answer to. Then, I can only assume you know who the husband is and about his connection with me. It wasn't too hard to figure out. His name sounded familiar. Then I remember the newspapers from back when your name first popped up. Does the police know about Does the police know anything about, well, where he is now? I mean, the man shook his head. He disappeared without a trace. Then what will happen to the kids he's taken away from her mother? Will he end up at some orphanage if he is taken away? And what happens after is not up to us to decide, I'm afraid. Personally, I don't think it's good for a child to be torn away from their home no matter what. Of course, if you care so much, you could apply to become a caretaker. Excuse me? Do you dislike the idea? It looks like you care about this fair a great deal, so it makes sense to me if you did this. Bobby hadn't considered the idea. Considering how often he found himself away from home due to his work, he wasn't certain he could perform the role of a parent. Moreover, raising a child is expensive. He would burn through his savings much faster than if he was living alone. If he took Elisa in, a career change would be out of the question. He needed a job that would pay well enough for the good of them, after all. The suggestion filled him with apprehension. I'm sorry about this, Bobby, but that's how it is. I can keep you posted. Yes, I appreciate it. See you later, then. Make sure you check your correspondence often. After they parted ways, Bobby didn't take his usual way home. He didn't make his way to the bathhouse either. His legs were taking him somewhere deep and dark while he was distracted thinking about this conundrum. The streets were chilly and silent. The moon's blue glow overpowered even the oil lamps lining the streets. Suddenly, Bobby looked up from the ground and realized what part of town was this. Perhaps because of the moonlight he couldn't recognize it. It wasn't that late, but the houses didn't show any sign of activity inside them. Not a noise, not a light inside. No one sitting outside to enjoy the breeze or peeking through the windows. The wind was becoming frigid, and that made it all the more striking when a yellow light appeared across the street, breaking through the moonlight. Bobby squinted at the building. It was a chapel, accompanied by a humble park with some wooden swings, a seesaw, and a slide. The crocodile shambling came to a stop as he squinted to the building. This is stupid. If I walked in there and offered the seven some prayers, how would that help me? God's really concerned themselves with such fleeting issues. People die every day, families are devastated and destroyed so often, if I'm within two. They won't help me. But that's alright. The contradictory emotions and body wrapped around each other, twisted themselves into a single thread. Although he once stood in his friend's saddle, he was his own man now. He had continued his business out of his desire for mystery and adventure, despite what baggage it might come with. But in the process, he had learned to observe a side of his friend that had a bitter taste in his mouth. Bobby didn't like Will anymore. If they met now, he would ignore him. And yet there was a sense of gratefulness that conflicted with this. He owed Will, if a little. Without him, he would still be in that stuffy church, working with his wicked family. He was unhappy he had failed to repay his debt by looking after Angela. But if something did happen to Angela, Bobby would at least take care of the daughter. Maybe it would delay his plans of changing careers, but he figured if he still had some gratitude toward Will, then his life wasn't too bad after all. Besides, whether he ultimately looking to connect with someone, adopting a child hadn't even crossed his mind until now. Maybe it was his own story that made it hard for the crocodile to entertain the idea he could act as a guardian, let alone a parent. But that was a bond nevertheless. One that lasted forever, that carved itself deeper and deeper like a needle piercing one's skin. For even if they are gone, the gaping wound and scars left behind stay with us, never to heal completely. Analyzing playback. I guess that was Bobby's past. We got to see a part of him that we didn't see in chapter 1. Him going to the bathhouse and had all the sexual favors from all the other men in there. And we got to learn how Buddy ended up eventually becoming Elisa's guardian. Because the father, for some reason, left. And the mother at home, she was in a state that she probably could not return. There was no return for her. She was really losing her mind, and that put Elisa in danger, because when you're at home with a parent that is not mentally there, some bad things can happen. So that apparently was the main reason why I decided to take Elisa in. Because we know, like, when we read chapter 1, Buddy took care of Elisa. So apparently that's how Elisa and Buddy had a relationship together. And that's how they ultimately became a detective duo. So a lot of strange things have been happening inside their home. And Angela, who is Elisa's mother, said that he saw a very tall man, too tall, and he had big yellow eyes. Not sure who that could be, but some strange things are happening in the home. That could be the reason why the mother is going so insane, really. I don't know, maybe not insane, but it's kind of not stable mentally, because she's seeing strange things happening in the house. So go ahead and we cover this story here, so we're going to move on to this story right here. Initializing playback. Dear Diary, today I went fishing with my mommy and daddy and David. Daddy made us put all the fish we caught in a bucket full of water. David and I had a competition. I won, but Daddy made us throw the fish back in the river after. I wanted to eat them. Dear Diary, today David took me to the church. I don't like going there. The monks are always asking him for favors. I want him to play only with me. He says when he's a bit older, he'll be very busy, so I want to play with him all the time until then. At least he's always buys me a snack after. He knows what I like better than Mommy and Daddy. They always get me sweets, but David knows I like those salty biscuits better. Dear Diary, today Grandpa returned home. I couldn't finish the book in time. David noticed I was down, so he took me to play in the park. I enjoyed myself because David was with me. I wish he didn't have to leave when he grows up. Dear Diary, last night I had to get up and go to the bathroom because I drank too much water before bed. On the way there, I heard voices coming from Grandpa's room. It was my grandpa and someone I didn't recognize. When I looked through the keyhole, I saw a strange man. He was dressed all in black. He didn't have a face, just stripes of white and blue. It must have been a nightmare. The way he talked scared me so much I don't remember what they were saying. Dear Diary, last night had another dream, a nicer one. I'm thinking that I met the goddess they always mention at the church before because I heard her voice. I was stuck in my bed. I couldn't move. I was scared at first, but then I heard her. Her voice was calm and nice. It reminded me of Mommy's. She asked me my name and I told her. Then she said she would make only one wish of mine come true. I thought about it for a bit, but the answer was obvious that David will always be there when I need him. There are no further entries past this point. Now the diary has many blank pages left. It's only simply stopped watching on it after this one. Finalizing playback. Well, that's a short story. So, I assume that was Elisa's diary. And she seemed to really love being with her brother. And that she is very sad that his brother will have to leave her pretty soon when he grows up. I think because he very had some kind of business and the father wanted him to be more involved in the business so eventually he could take it over. I think that's the reason. So at least it really seemed to love her brother David, and she always wanted to be with her brother, and she even had a wish. She wanted the goddess Erd. She wanted the goddess Erd to make a wish for her, and she wished that her brother will always be there for her. Which is a nice wish. And I think in her diary she mentions about that same man that her mother described the body, and that this man didn't have a face. He was dressed in all black and had weapons. He was covered with weapons, I believe. He was in Grandpa's room. So that could have been the same man who Angela saw. Now, this person Elisa saw, it was in her dream, but maybe this person can be in both dreams and in real life. Could it be possibly even an ascendant or a shapeshifter? One of them? I don't know, but could be. A little boy got up from the floor, looked out the window. The sound of hooves and wheels on the road had piqued his curiosity. Carriages never arrived this late to the town unless they contained travelers new to the area, most likely looking for a shelter for the night. The kid watched intently as the carriage passed by the orphanage. Interestingly, it wasn't a beat-up old thing like always. It was large, like a ceiling, a door, and windows like a small moving house. The wood looked impeccable as well. He had seen similar carriages only in picture books. As the carriage disappeared, the boy heard a knock on the door, which then opened without further warning. Miss Maria entered the dormitory, followed by the boy's roommates. Edmund had his favorite ball under his arm. I still guess you'd be back in your room by now, Alois. Are you studying? Oh no, I was just reading a story. The woman nodded, having recognized the thick book next to Alois. I see. Well, let's get you ready for bed. First, let's offer the 7-hour prayers. No one had ever told Alois this. It was something he had figured out by himself. But he was unlike the other kids. He was good at listening to the adults, doing chores, studying, participating in games outdoors. That much was to be expected. Without a family, one day they would need to fend for themselves all alone. This orphanage was located in a humble region. It was operated with the intent of raising exceptional boys and girls who worked for the 7 churches in the future, and as such, they received funding from the churches themselves. In the town it was located in had been developed to house the officers, workers, as well as provided with food, repairs, and such services. The kids were unaware of this, of course. All they were told was that they needed to study hard to earn a comfortable future. That if they failed, they would end like the farmers that they sometimes saw working all day long under the sun. But not everyone could perform well. Some kids didn't care for the adults' warnings or struggled with the subjects they were taught. Maybe they missed their feelings or the pressure was too big for them. Even the ones performing well would cry themselves to sleep every once in a while. As for Alois, he found all of this very strange. He never felt such pressure or fear, but he wasn't excited about his prospects either. He often thought back to one of his first classes at the orphanage. A loud slap had resonated through the room, soon to be followed by a high-pitched scream. Another kid had been using a classmate as target practice with his mate do straw blowgun. The teacher had been in a foul mood since early that morning, and that mischief set him off. He shouted at and hit the boy, who screamed in confusion and pain, only to receive further abuse and retaliation. Everyone witnessed the scene with wide eyes and tense shoulders until the teacher finally decided to drag the kid to a corner of the classroom and told him to stay there for what remained of the class. It was back then that Alois first thought that there was something wrong with him. One of his roommates approached him after and told him, "Oh, Alois, I wish I was really like you." He didn't even flinch when Mr. Charles got mad. He really hadn't. The fear that the boy had observed in his classmates' eyes and imposter was completely absent in his heart. Alois thought he really must have been brave, but soon he realized otherwise. Alois never felt afraid. He didn't feel anxious about his future, but he didn't feel determined or even interested in it. All he did was follow the adults' orders, since someone had instilled in him that good boys listen to what the adults said. And he wanted to be a good boy. But this didn't mean his life was completely devoid of emotion. As part of his education, Alois was mandated to read books selected for him. 2 years ago, one title had caught his attention. Right now he didn't remember the title. He didn't think it was a good book either. But a premise had captivated him. A teenage girl unraveling the mysteries around a monster woman to inhabit a spot near her village. Since Alois had become interested in books with similar subjects. Unfortunately, he had to make do with the orphanage's library, which wasn't very large. And so his favorite book ended up being a compilation of old mails from the old world. It was assigned to read about the many creatures believed to inhabit the old world's ancient times. Giants, griffins, hydras, gorgons, minotaurs. And he was also sad about how often they met violent ends. The world was an unkind place to monsters, he thought. "Alois, can you help me with my homework before class today? I don't understand this problem. I didn't do my homework yet either. Let's do it together after breakfast." "Alright." That morning at the dining hall, Will made an announcement. "Today, gentlemen, from the Knox class will..." But ever since, Alois had become interested in books with similar subjects. Unfortunately, he had to make do with the orphanage's library, which wasn't very large, and so his favorite book ended up being a compilation of old myths from the old world. It was exciting to read about the being creatures believed to inhabit the old worlds of ancient times. Giants, griffins, hydras, gorgons, minotaurs. He was also saddened by how often they met violent ends. The world was an unkind place to monsters, he thought. Alois, can you help me with my homework before class today? I don't understand this problem. I didn't do my homework yet either. Let's do it together after breakfast. Alright. That morning, in the dining hall, Maria made an announcement. Today, gentlemen from Knox Church will visit us, so be on your best behavior. They will watch our classes and will be staying here until this afternoon. Having another adult sitting on the side during the entirety of the class was a bit strange to the kids, when the flip side, the teachers were a bit nice and helpful in their presence. The man in Aloysius' classroom, a gentleman with round glasses and very little hair left on the sides and back of his head, seemed disinterested, although he took note of everything he saw. Later that day, Alois was about to go play with the other kids when Maria called him. A man from the church was accompanying her. How can I help, ma'am? This gentleman said he'd like to meet you, Alois. Let me introduce you. This is Alvaro, abbot of Knox Church. The crocodile offered the boy a handshake, which he accepted after an instant. That's fine, Tabby. That's fine. Here, will you mind looking at this? The abbot pulled a ring from his finger and held it in front of Alois. The boy blinked, staring into the gemstone on top of it. It was pitch black the way a deep hole in the ground was. He felt pulled in, but he didn't avert his eyes. It startled him a little when the crocodile closed his hand and moved it behind his back. How interesting. All your teachers tell me you're quite a remarkable little boy. Say you're interested in the outside world? And traveling, maybe? Alois shook his head. Excellent. I heard you like books. Do you know our church has the biggest library in the world? That made that boy perk up. Unfortunately, it's only accessible to non-monks. What do you say? Will you become one of my monks if you could access it? Do you have stories of monsters? I've always an eyebrow in that question. Maria quickly interjected. He loves old world myths. Those are his favorite reads. I see. Why, yes, we have a lot of those. A collection of old world tales along drawers in your library you can hope to find in a backward town such as this. Maria barely held back, glaring at Alvaro, but Alois hadn't even registered that. Was it true that had so many monster stories they would even fit in the orphanage's library? A subtle walking mostly betrayed his interest. Well, I asked a question. Oh, yes, I like that. The crocodile snapped his fingers. Perfect. Get to packing your things, kid. We're at the party in an hour. And say goodbye to your friends. Finalizing playback. So, how much longer will you tour here? Are you ready to give up? We don't need the outside world, you know. We don't need to play pretend to fit in and much less to strive for times long past. Here we can have anything we want. Some will tell you it's an illusion, but so what? Everyone lives in their little head. They just try to pass their world off as the truth because they are too big of cowards to admit how empty all this nonsense is. Look at the witch. Let me tell you about her. I know what awaits her in the future. Hers is a loveless world where people are measured by their usefulness. She's no hypocrite. She holds herself to that same standard. Knowing she's a burden, how weak and feeble she is, it eats up at her heart. Yet the detective has nothing but love towards her. He's willing to put up with an inconsiderable sacrifice to make sure she's alright. But because she sees people in such a simplistic way, she's unable to open up and accept their affection. Although love isn't all it takes to save a person, if she could accept it, then perhaps things will end up differently for her. It's interesting to me how that perspective of hers blinds her. And talking about love, I wonder if that monster boy even feels that at all. Not that, no, that might be a bit cruel of me. Monsters don't necessarily lack a capacity for love, but maybe they process it differently than other beings. Anyway, the point is that there is no saying in surrendering to the illusion. You can make all that you see into the truth. I'll be here waiting eagerly for you to accept my offer. I'm no liar. These new stories popped up. They're not actually new stories, but like continuation. Each of them are like continues the stories from below. So this green line here, means that this story about bodies past will continue in this story here. This is at least his diary, so this line here means that this will continue with more of Lisa's diaries. And this story concerning Alois, his childhood, and how he became a monk will continue here. And so, like, these stories here about Obley, and once I get here, the stories spoil out. These also spoil out, but all of a sudden, these stories merge to here. So, might this be some more content for Obley? Maybe. And then that's some more stories. So these probably will continue more of the three respective stories here. This all the way up here could be the final part of the game, maybe. I'm not sure. So these are 3020. Next time we'll cover these stories, which are 18 years of the future, 3038. So this will be like a 18 year time jump. And eventually, once we get up to here, this will be 3041 AD, which was the same year that we first saw, at least in body, going to the island and saw the mystery. So looks like we'll be heading back to that time, and maybe we might even figure out what's causing the world to end in their world, in their time. So, concerning Alois' story, he was a smart kid, and while all the other kids either play around or disobey their teachers and their adults, Alois did whatever the adults told him to do, and he was very smart in class to the point that all the other students asked him to help them with their homework. And that's part of the reason why Alvaro picked Alois to join the church across the sea. To the point that he's probably impressed with how smart he was, to the point that he immediately told Alois to tell his friends goodbye and come with him. And the fact that Alois was so interested in monsters and from the old world, probably the reason why he really wanted to be a werewolf so badly. Because he said that in the chapter 1 that he wanted to be a werewolf. He just chose to be a werewolf. He wasn't just born a werewolf, that he was originally born as a human, but he decided to become a werewolf because he likes it. So this part we just read sort of explains why he has a fascination with werewolves, because he has a fascination with monsters. He wants to be like a monster. So that's all I have to say for the game, unless I'm forgetting something. So so we played Aloys as a child. I decided not to give him the deep voice. I had a deep voice for Aloys as a werewolf, and I just used a regular voice for him as a child. So I used a deep voice for him as a werewolf to reflect the fact that he's changed to a werewolf, because he's actually bigger and stronger now as a werewolf, and he has different powers. So I decided to add a deep voice for him to reflect his change to a werewolf. So I decided to use a regular voice for him as a human child. So that's all I have for now. And forgot the creator and Nerus announced on Itch.io that a new update will be coming out on the 28th, which is on Friday. So there's gonna be some more new content, a continuation of these stories. I don't know how far it's gonna go up here, but there will be new content on the 28th. And this is the first update that will come out in over a year, because what we're playing now came from an update from March of last year, March 2022. So this new update coming out on the 28th of this month will be over a year since a new update came out. So I gotta go ahead and finish all this first before I download the new update. So all the information for the game is in the description box below, including the Patreon and the coffee, where you can make a one-time donation, and by going to Patreon and donating to Patreon, you get some perks for being on Patreon, and as well as a Twitter account for the game and the progress of the game and when new updates come out. So thank you all very much for watching. Goodbye. If you download the game, you also have access here. This is the coffee, this is the Patreon, this is Itch.io here. So you download the game, you can click these and go to those accounts and support the game and rate the game as well. So like I said, thanks for watching. Goodbye.